So thank you guys. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to hopefully walk you through an interesting story. So like Steve said, I come from a varied background, right? Probably completely different than what you think I really do in my role, right? So yeah, I do data and I do analytics and I do insights, but I've built my career around trying to merge marketing and business and creating that best synergy between what marketing does and ultimately how it translates into a business world, right? And you would kind of frame that into more of kind of what marketing, I would say what management consultancies have done historically, right? And what you're starting to see manifest itself is the desire for brands and now the mandate for agencies of all kinds to start creating that link more. And then how do you really do that in a world that technically doesn't lend itself to do that really well, right? And I'm going to walk you through a story, and at the end of that story, what you're going to see, hopefully, is, you know, we've got a lot of opportunities, but yet in those opportunities, there's a lot of risk, right? In a world that we talk about investment, and if you think about individuals like yourselves, about your desires to invest, you know, something that you have into a future that you want to have that pay off, how much risk are you willing to tolerate for a reward that might come today versus tomorrow? Might come at all, right? So when you go to a financial advisor, you give them a goal, him or her. Here's $1 million. I want you to grow at 20, 40%, right? Just as long as you don't break any rules, FBI doesn't show up on my doorstep, knocks on my door, puts me in handcuffs, I have full faith in you because you've given me no reason not to have faith in you, right? I'm sure you're smart, I'm sure you have algorithms, right? Take that same mindset, apply it to the media world, right? How much confidence do you really need to give $1, $1 billion, to an agency to have that agency act as an investment advisor, right, for your brand? And then at the same time, what do you need to do as a brand to put yourself in a position to make the most meaningful impact, right? Because it's actually a synergy between what the agency does and what you have to do ultimately. So the world has changed significantly over the years, right? We've gone from simply one to many and many to one, right? So what we were was a whole bunch of people sitting in front of a TV at exactly one time. Easiest thing in the world. There was really no risk in that. I knew where everybody was at 5 o'clock, right? Viewability, fraud, all those things, non-issues. Got everybody in the room, right? The question of attention, even that wasn't even there because everybody had nothing else to do but pay attention to the TV, right? Fast forward, what we've done is now fragmented everything, right? We fragmented that attention. We fragmented this notion of having people come together and coalesce. We fragmented our ability to really create a meaningful connection, I would say. And what you also have done because of that, and because of these things, is remove a person from an environment. A person is no longer determined by a place, no longer bound by a time, right? They're mobile. And with that comes massive opportunities, right? Because now you can get those people no matter where they are, right? Ideally. Because of that, right, the landscape has become so complex because of everybody coming into the market to be able to what historically has been a very simple person here, right? An advertiser and a consumer, love connection, right? When it was one to many, that was simple. When it's many to one, we fundamentally believe that that has to be required. In itself, that creates a lot of opportunity, but think about this lack of transparency or the perceived lack of transparency. And with that, the risk that you take on. And with that, the lack of confidence that you start perceiving, right? And then you start questioning, is my brand being put in a position that is ultimately going to make the most meaningful impact on either my existing customer or the person that I'm trying to get to, right? And you simplify it, I have $1. How much of that dollar is actually ending up working for me in the best way? Because if I have to work in a complex marketing environment, where if I get $1, you're not actually reaping the benefits of $1, right? Subtract everything else that has to happen to get that impression to a person, no matter where they are, right? Maybe you're getting to a 50%. So that dollar is actually giving you 50 cents of value, right? Now try to take away other things that could potentially dilute the value of that. Brand safety, viewability, fraud, invalid traffic, right? All those things that dilute the value of that. Not only does it dilute the value of the potential impact, it can actually have adverse impacts on your brand. Right? So instead of making a meaningful impact, you're actually detracting away from the potential of making a powerful impact. So this notion of complexity causes concern, right? Causes angst, causes anxiety, causes confusion, right? In that self, the natural reaction is to put up a lot of barriers and to start questioning, right, the value of everything, including the value of an agency. Start questioning, right, why do I really need all these things, and how is that ultimately being manifested? Start questioning my ability to make an impact on the business. Right? So if every CMO is starting to be scrutinized every single day because everybody just has to pick up a trade press and realize that what we're trying to do is significantly complex. Nobody has the true confidence to explain it in a way that says, I get it, we've seen it, we've accounted for it, we've put ourselves in the best position to benefit from it. But you go back, and the simple ask, what really happens is this relationship, right, will never change. So think about it, the first ad that was placed in the newspaper, what the hell was the objective of that ad? Was that? The next, where we are today, same objective, right? That. Fast forward 200 years from now, what's the same objective? That. So it's never going to change, right? Everything else has changed, right? So that where it became simple, right? This notion of having programmatic enable that makes it sound really easy, right? Data, technology, opportunity. There we go. We've shortened that distance now, right? So now we've come back to the reality of, oh, I can get that person any single time. Now, that's a very oversimplification of what should happen, what technically we know because, again, you look at every trade report in some form or fashion in the last 2 years. Transparency, trust, accountability, right? You're starting seeing that start nip away at what that promise was. Not to say it can't manifest and it can't be fulfilled, but it's having a very difficult time living up to it today. Right? So the potential is there. The reality becomes a challenge. Particularly when you take all these types of things that we have to take into account as a qualifying that opportunity, right? So you have things that the brand doesn't control. So you have viewability, fraud, ad collision, geography, device, audience, language, page quality. You have all those things that take that impression and have the ability to dilute that impression. And at the same time have the ability to have an adverse impact. But then you have the brand, right? So do you have the right message? Are you providing the right experience? Those things also dilute the value of that impression and can have a significant impact negatively on the brand. So all those things start creating this notion of concern, trust, right? You're starting to see big brands, right, react to that, like P&G, right? And similar to what Amazon, when P&G sneezes, an epidemic comes out to the system. Not to say that there is an opportunity in the digital ecospace. It just says that we've probably overextended into that digital space because of all these things. Because we've gone so complex in our ability to try to get back to a simple equation, which is put an ad in front of a consumer, right? We've made that ecosystem and that supply chain so complex, and the opportunity, like anybody else, has bred, right, this condition that detracts from the potential. But what it does give us is the ability now to manifest that potential. So it's given us a lot of things that are part of this equation, which is data. Right? It manifests itself in many different ways. Right? Not all of it is useful. A lot of it can be misleading. Right? So now you have to look at it and how do I use that to still do the thing that ultimately we have to do, which is person, place, time, message, environment. How do we use information like that? Couple it with identity. Right? So the fundamental thing that we will have to come to the understanding is, in order for us to protect the brand, to minimize risk, maximize opportunity for that brand, remember what we're trying to do, which is you got to reach a person. You're not reaching a robot. You're not reaching a Ponzi scheme of opportunities that tries to manifest itself. Right? We're trying to reach a person. So identity becomes critically important as a fundamental starting point for our ability to maximize the opportunity for the brand in any environment, but particularly digital, particularly programmatic, particularly display. We've seen Steve and others talk about how much money is going to that environment. Right? Without identity, I have a very hard time believing that we're going to get out of this place that we're in today. We're actually probably going to dig ourselves even more of a hole. So identity becomes important. That starts the process. Information, data provides the foundation for us to drive identity. Right? And because of identity, we get a clear understanding of that data and put it to our audience. A true definition of a person. And let me tell you something, no matter how smart, advanced, people that try to create fraud in this environment, because it's extremely difficult to truly copy a person. Right? There are fundamental things that it becomes extremely, extremely, extremely difficult to replicate it in a way, right, that truly manifests itself as a person. Because there are so many things that defines us as a human being, technology could never mimic. Now the question is, how do you take what you have available today, information, advanced processing, right? Fundamental understanding of consumer, both how they think, how they behave, how they act in ecosystem, outside the ecosystem, right? To truly, truly combat that somebody is trying to replicate that consumer. You have this notion of data, computing power. So we have things today that fundamentally we couldn't even think about, which is called quantum computing. Right? The ability to take massive information from so many different places, extrapolate such precision of information, apply machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning, right? So the system learns to differentiate what is truth versus what is perceived truth. And then creates that as the fundamental basis where forensics happens all the time, right? Anomalies get detected. Patterns get broken. So you identify good from bad. And then you're putting yourself in a position to maximize the value of that impression again. What it does, it separates the most powerful signal, which is ultimately what we ultimately trying to get to, right? This information against this person in this signal gives me the ammo that I need to make an investment decision at that specific time. But then it allows me to make the smartest investment decisions overall, so I can take $1 and reap $1 of value, not 20 cents of value, reap $1 of value, right? Assuming the brand creates the conditions for that dollar to manifest. Experience, message, service delivery, right? All those things that have to match up to what we're trying to find a consumer in a place with a message, right? To have that delivered and matched up to that promise. So we have this technology, we have this data, we have this analytics, we have advanced analytics. We have processing power. So we have the component parts to create a system of intelligence. Right? That system of intelligence today exists, right? I will argue that you have companies, right, that sit within MIT, that sit within the government, that sit within other governments, that sit within, Amazon, that sit within, I would say, a lot of things that we probably have not even thinking about, which is things that have the fundamental desire to prove out anomalies and catch up on patterns to deliver, right, information in a way and in a time that allows somebody to make a very informed decision with confidence. Right? Logistics is a great example of that. Stock market is a great example of that. And I use the stock market because I fundamentally believe that the media space is transitioning more, like it or not, into that type of reality. So it's very, very, very difficult to trick the stock market. People try, they get caught. Right? Because the market has been doing this so well over 100 years, is that it's picked up every possible way to try to trick it. You might get away with it in the short term. In the long term, you're going to get caught, you're going to get prosecuted, you're going to go to jail. People tried it, everybody fails. In our space, people try it, they succeed. So other people come. Right? And it breeds an opportunity there, right? So I think you start applying the same type of logic to it, right? Because we're trying to invest the same way. We're investing an asset against an opportunity to have it pay off either in the short term or the long term. So there's things there. There's also things that we're starting to think about applying to this world, which is this notion of complexity science, right? So how do you deal with complexity? Well, treat it like a science. And if you adapt to that thinking, and if you apply the fundamental techniques that combine complexity science, because what it does is looks at individual things, right? Macro, micro, that build up to this macro ecosystem, right? So if you've fundamentally accounted for every single thing, truly, and how it impacts everything else, then you've built the macro understanding of what it does. So we're starting to see this notion of complexity science be built in to basically create something that truly allows the money to manifest the opportunity that it impacts the brand. So then you get into the notion of advertiser audience. So you have data, first-party data, great, awesome. I will say that it's highly unlikely that we're going to get in a situation where you don't have to use second and third-party data. You have to, right? Similar to anything else, you have to find the best way to combine that information to create true identity and to manifest true opportunity, either in the moment or throughout moments. So you have this ability to then look at individuals, combine those individuals to create segments, create decisions to pay that relationship off that I talked about, person, place, time, message, context, to drive impact. And impact takes many different ways. So the impression has to deliver on impact ultimately, right? Marketing to business. Otherwise, I would argue that we all should be out of jobs if we can't necessarily prove how money delivers impact. True impact, right? Sales, revenue, which might or not be the same things, but ultimately bottom line profit. Cognitive, people think a certain way, right? Emotive, how they feel, right? Behavioral, what they do. And ultimately transactional, do they buy, right? Nobody's going to buy unless they go through this process. And typically what we call this is a hierarchy of effects. There has to be a hierarchy that has to happen. So impact has to be manifested in this way. Now, this could be bad or it could be good. It could be severely bad, it could be severely good, depending on how much we're able to understand the environment and the ecosystem that impression lives in. So we can then maximize that impression to deliver that impact. So we have these types of an ability to take information, right, and then simply do the things that we have to do to pay that impact off, which is the moment, the mindset, the media, the message, and the mission. Right? to create true impact, you have to deliver on these M's. Otherwise, I have a hard time that impression is going to really deliver value or deliver its full potential of value, unless you take that, try to transition in a way that delivers on these key principles. The other thing that we can do is shorten the time. So in our world, because of complexity, right, that creates latency. And in the world that we live in, right, to be able to maximize impact, you don't have the luxury of time. Sometimes you do. More times, the opportunity presents itself. True opportunity, you have to make a decision. Right? Strategy is strategy. You have tactical and you have operations. You want an ability to reduce the latency between an event and an action, with full confidence that that event is truly an event, truly a person, truly an opportunity, truly aligned to the brand. Take the data, go to a decision mindset through that process, and manifest that in a way that allows us to drive the brand. So it presents that opportunity to us as well. So if we take these things into play, what we'll ultimately come down to is, how do we know what's going to work, right? What is truly the tangible thing that we're going to take this massive opportunity, try to account for those things that can dilute that opportunity, and then is the juice worth the squeeze? If we do all this stuff, is it going to truly manifest in a brand? And the reality is, when I get asked to come in and do forensics, more times than not, I usually find something that dilutes the brand. And what that really means is it dilutes the CMO's opportunity to drive their business. So the dollar is not a dollar, it's 20 cents. So when we run models, market mix models, MTAs, any response modeling, any ROI modeling, if you're not accounting for these things, you want to know what happens? The ROI is not strong, or it's nowhere near as strong as it should be, because you're taking 1 billion impressions, and you're thinking that all those billion impressions actually are true impressions, impressions that make the most meaningful impact, not accounting for every possible thing that could dilute that impact. But if you have the tools, the technology, the human experience, the business context, the market context, you can start applying these types of things and start filtering that information, right? Accountants do this all the time, right? The true accountants of forensics do this all the time. The smart ones catch everything. In the stock market, catch everything, right? Some things slip. The majority, 99.9% of the time, they get caught. So if you do that and you run those same delivery models, right? Take 1 billion impressions, truly extrapolate fraud, nothing that was met, viewability standards, audience standards, device standards, geography standards, all those things that dilute the value. Run those same models again. ROI significantly increases, sometimes as much as 70%. So it proves the value and the potential of digital in any form or fashion, right? But it looks at it from a quality perspective, not a quantity perspective, right? Digital has bred a world of quantity, right, at the sacrifice of quality, right? When we say we can deliver, 1 trillion impressions against an audience that is maybe 100,000, well, why do we really need to deliver 1 trillion impressions against an audience that's only 100,000? Is that really the environment, right? And then that's highly unlikely that is actually really, truly a trillion impressions you deliver against that audience. True manifested potential impressions. So if we do that, right, we want to minimize, right, that exposure of risk to ultimately maximize what we do. So if you take those things that impact, there's just natural fraud, right? Just put it in those buckets, say, they really are not true impressions. You also start accounting for the things that negatively impacted the brand. So you're relying against the news story that was not favorable. right? Your message didn't mean the mindset of the moment or the mood. I guarantee you the person is going to start, I don't know, I might change my perception of the brand. That also impacts our ROI, right? So that now you have this ability to say, I'm taking what I know is to be true. I just don't know how true it is. Take the techniques and fundamentals and principles of data, analytics, technology, right? The advanced computing power to truly try to create this way of going from the bottom to the top as best as possible. I use this image a lot because I think it provides I would say, a hopefully easy understanding way, right? So if everybody knows this is a story night, right? So if we go back and think about what we are living today, right? I show this picture without showing the end picture. You're going to be like, well, I really don't know what it is. That's how most CMOs feel. Like, I really don't know what I'm really getting, right? You start applying a lot of these principles, you start getting a better understanding of what's really coming. Right? Well, what this does, it introduces this thing that really you need, which is clarity. And through that clarity, you have confidence. Right? You can't have confidence if you're not clear about what the hell's happening and truly what the opportunity is. You do that, you empower decisions in the beginning. So when you're creating strategy, audiences, opportunity, potential, ingoing, truly understand what each tactic is going to provide and how those tactics create the ecosystem of impact. And then as you introduce that into the market, right, all these things are going to start pushing out these signals because you've created a systematic way of understanding, right? So you're not diluting the value of that important asset, which is your brand. And that brand has the opportunity to create massive impact at the end. So it introduces the ability to take data-fueled activations, right? Activations truly, right, that are going to manifest a positive way. But I am always a realist, right? So the desire is to create maximum value to the business. The reality is, right, to reduce and remove fraud completely, at least today, is an idealistic thought. The reality of it all is, how do you minimize, right, or mitigate risk? Everybody that's a brand in this room is going to have a certain tolerance, just like your investment. You're going to have a tolerance of risk. Your investment portfolio has a tolerance level of risk, depending on what you're trying to do. You might want to risk a little more. You might not want to be risk adverse at all. So the question becomes, how do you minimize and mitigate that risk to try to put yourself in a position where you maximize the value of what you do in front of your most important asset, which is the person that you're trying to create a relationship with. Right? So I think we have the capabilities and the potential to do that today. Right? Much better than I think most people think we do. Right? I think we have to try to rely on experts, no matter where they live. Right? And I think we have to look outside of where we normally talk to. Right? There's a lot of great potential that's happening in academia. Right? Has everybody here ever gone to MIT and visit the labs? Yeah? Yeah? Everybody should try to do that. Those guys are crazy, ridiculously smart. Right? And most of those people don't even know anything about media. But I think that's a good thing. Right? Because they're not biased about what we're trying to do. They're just trying to solve a problem. Right? And ironically, it's those same type of guys that are probably creating fraud because they're that smart. But I would say it's probably the same guys that are trying to fight that as well. So go there, it's crazy, right? You have guys that are in bioengineering, biomedical, that are looking at adaptive systems, complex systems, and applying those same types of principles to try to bring it to media, to try to solve for this relationship, right? Have nothing to do with what we do for a living, but they're seeing an opportunity because they're making a connection. And they're bringing that to the space, right? So I would say if you're a brand, even if you're an agency, no matter, even if you're not an agency, you're a tech player, right? Try to get this understanding of ultimately, right, how do we best put the agency, if that's your end client. But at the end of the day, how do we best put the brand in a position that it can create true, meaningful success and impact? It can be done. It's not going to be 100%. I would say if we're at 30 now, we'll probably get to ability to be maybe at 60, 70. But let me tell you something. In this space, marginal gains, like volumetric businesses, because remember, we're in a volumetric business no matter what you do. I don't care if you sell one product every year, you're in a volumetric business. Why? Because you trade impressions. Those impressions are volume. You're in a volumetric business, right? How that manifests is different based on where you are in a business. So if you treat it like that, right, it has the opportunity to be extremely successful. So if you're in a volumetric business, even a 0.1% change in all these things creates massive impact, right? You extract significantly more yield from everything that you do, which then manifests extremely well on the business. But here's where the agencies, and I'm an agency, but I'm okay saying this because I don't really come from the agency world. Does that mean that $1 billion is going to be slashed to 200 million? Maybe. But let me tell you something, those 200 million, if that is the case, that 1 billion that translated 1 billion, the 200 million will translate 1.2 billion. But if that is the end goal, then do you really care how much money is being invested to achieve the goal? Achieve the goal of growth. But what you've done is now, if there's $1 billion on the table, I highly doubt that any CMO, any CEO, any CFO is going to say, crap, I have more opportunity now? Take the money, reinvest it. So I don't think the money's going to go away. I just think you're going to have the opportunity to reinvest it smarter. Make it work harder, right? Both in the short term, and let's not forget, brands get built over the long term. So I do believe because of digital, which I think is also diluting the value of the brand, this notion of short term, right, has overtaken the equity of the brand over the long term. So I think that's another thing that the brand has to be in consideration because they're thinking, I have to do it in the moment, in the moment, in the moment. And the reality is taking 20, 30, 40 years to build a brand. It might take you 6 months to dilute the equity of the brand that you've built because you're focusing on short term versus realizing the brand pays off over term. You do these things, you're not going to see meaningful impact in a week or two. That goes back to the short-termism, right? Because it's not working. Let it build over time. Every year, every 2 years, right? You assess the business, I guarantee you'll see massive impacts on the business, right? You'll see how media, marketing, truly, truly drives the business. And then any CMO now has the ability to sit in front of any CEO and any CFO and have a true discussion about marketing's impact on business, right? And the most important impact on business is actually the bottom line, right? That's what it really comes down to. So I think we are in an environment that can happen. Not easy, right? Very doable, but not easy. That's it.
George, thank you very much. Anybody, we have time for a couple of questions for George. George, I have one quick question about negative impact.
Yep.
We've talked about this before. We measure for performance. We measure for sort of broad, vague brand affinities and likability and favorability. But how are we? What metrics do we need to better understand what sort of overall negative impact digital advertising can have on a brand that maybe we're not measuring for or fully appreciate or understand? We just heard on the previous panel, Tricia mentioned that one of her brands got pinged on social media because their customers were seeing too many of the same damn ad on an OTT platform. Yep. And I think more of that goes on than we measure or we even have metrics for.
Yeah. So I think impact from a negative perspective. More times than not manifests in a very simple thing, which is the message, right? So the message, if you look at a lot of just benchmarking studies about the contribution of a message to the impact of what marketing does, right? It's about 70%. So you get the message wrong, you've taken 70% of the potential power of your message and your marketing to work. You take that same message and repeat it multiple times, it's going to significantly dilute the perception of the brand. The most important of that, it's going to recondition the consumer that the brand doesn't really understand them, right? doesn't really understand how to communicate to them, right? And it's going to change that typology map of where the brand sits in the mind space, or sometimes it removes it from that mind space, right? So then you fast forward, you put the right message against the right audience, but you do it in so many times. And I wouldn't say it's just one platform, right? To run it, right, even in an addressable, I would argue, you run it 35, 40, 50 times, somebody's going to get really, really, really pissed at some point, right? And it's going to manifest. And now the problem is, historically, you didn't know about it. Now you do, right? To channels like social media, right? Your most vocal consumers, your prospects, are going to be the ones that are probably, right, just want an environment to express, right? Not necessarily to know that those are the people that are truly the ones that you should make the most direction off of, but I think they're probably a fair representation of that you're communicating way too much with them. Take that and apply it again and again, where you're trying to spread that message across all these environments, right? And if you've got so much frequency that you're doing so much reinforcement and repetition, that is actually, at some point we've seen, when you think about brand perception, key metrics, whatever your brand is, e-commerce, in-store, right, sales, you are actually getting an inflection point where you get diminishing returns, right? And because of those diminishing returns that you're not catching, right, the more you start arching down, right, the significantly more the brand hurts. The farther it goes down to the right, the harder it is to move it back up to where it adjusts to create impact. So I think things like that, the message is usually the most important thing, right? Either the wrong message or you have the right message, but you're doing it in a disconnected way, one. Two, the message, the promise doesn't pay off on the message, or the message gets communicated so frequently that you got the consumer at 7, you lost the consumer at 20. So you had the person, but now you've lost them because you've spoken too much about the same exact thing.
George, thank you very much. You're going to be extending that in a roundtable.